Hey, this is Owen. If you're comfortable, leave your first name and state at the sound of the tiny truck backing up.
Hello, Telltale. This is Trevor Bertzel of Michigan. I have a question for you about the Bible. There in the Bible had these prophets or whatever. They sort of predicted like what happened in the future. And since you're an atheist, how could you explain that? Like, how do you is it possible to disprove prophets? Like they predicted stuff like Hitler, Henry II, a lot of stuff that we're feeling currently. How do you disprove that? Thank you. And I love.
Oh, I cut off the end. Let's listen to the end.
Thank you. And I love your show.
Okay, so this person is a fan. I felt that it was important to fit that in there. I appreciate the voicemail. Really interesting. But I have to say, I'm not the one with the burden of proof with this stuff. Okay, so at the end, the question was, how do you disprove that? I don't have to disprove anything. A prophet, quote unquote, is making claims about the Bible. They have to prove to me that they're correct. So the default position is not believing what they're saying. I don't feel that any of them have met the burden of proof to convince me that what they've quote unquote prophesied is true. And the reason I don't feel that they've met their burden of proof is because prophecies have to be very, very specific. There's a model for what makes something a prophecy. Let me give you an example of a prophecy that the Bible claims that didn't actually happen, okay? In the Old Testament, it talks about a Messiah that's going to come and save the Jews, and he'll be riding in on a donkey and all of this other stuff. Very specific stuff, right? Here's an example of something that's not a prophecy. These people from the New Testament found a guy and then made sure he met all of those requirements. They had him ride in on a donkey, for example. The Old Testament says he'll be born of a marriageable young woman. That's the actual word and what it translates to. It means marriageable young woman. But the writers of the New Testament misunderstood or misinterpreted or misread what the Old Testament was saying about Jesus, and they thought that it said he had to be born of a virgin incorrectly. So they went back and tried to make it fit, to make it look like Jesus was born of a virgin. It said that he would have to be born in Bethlehem. So the New Testament writers retroactively went back and tried to make up this fabricated story about why Jesus was actually from Nazareth, but he was born in Bethlehem by saying that Caesar ordered everybody who had been born or everybody who was from that area to come back for a census. What? That has never happened in the history of ever, first of all. That would be hard enough to do in the modern age with modern technology. This was like 2,000 years ago. They didn't have the internet. They barely had a fucking mail system back then. How would anybody find out that they were supposed to go back to the city where their grandparents were born or their parents were born or whatever? And how would they even know what city their parents were born in? Do you know which city your parents were born in? I happen to know mine, but they're two different states and two different cities, and they had nothing to do with where I grew up. Never even been to the cities where my parents were born. I only know those places because I saw it on my birth certificate. They didn't have birth certificates like that back then, 2,000 years ago. Point is, the Bible lists these prophecies out, right? And then later, in later books, it fabricates explanations for why it was correct in the first place. A prophecy, to be a real prophecy, can't be spoken to anybody until after the events take place. Can't be told, or else it'll be contaminated, or else they'll try to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it has to be very, very nuanced and specific, with specific events and dates and times listed. And if those qualifications are met, then I would consider it to be a fulfilled prophecy. None of that has ever happened throughout the history of time as far as I can tell. And even then, I would say there's a non-zero chance that it's a coincidence. The more specific it is, the less of a chance that it's a coincidence. Now, I noticed in the voicemail you also mentioned that the Bible predicts Hitler and Henry VIII or something like that. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Is that like Bible code stuff where like if you take like the second letter of the fifth verse of the third chapter of every book in the Bible and you put them all together, then it spells out a code? I don't know anything about that, but you can literally make anything say anything if that's how you're doing it. Like you can make Moby Dick predict space travel if you wanted. There is no reason to think that that's accurate or that the Bible did that intentionally or otherwise.